Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
Dissent matters in this moment.
Mayor Johnson says the city is ready for large anti-Trump and anti-ICE protests expected this weekend. The historic Rainbow Push Coalition is putting out a call to action with new leadership. And the challenges facing many black fathers and efforts to support them. And now to some of today's top stories. City officials say they are ready for large-scale protests in Chicago on Saturday. Organizers are planning to protest President Donald Trump and his efforts to use federal agents to carry out mass deportations of undocumented immigrants.
I am counting on all of Chicago to resist in this moment, because whatever particular vulnerable group is being targeted today, another group will be next.
Thousands of protesters demonstrated in Loop yesterday, calling for ICE agents to leave Chicago. Officials say some CTA buses and police cars were vandalized and 17 people were arrested. The nationwide protests come as Marines and more National Guard troops are set to arrive in Los Angeles today, despite the objections of California's governor. The so-called No Kings rally and march is taking place at Daley Plaza on Saturday at noon. It comes on the same day as President Trump holds a military parade in D.C. for his birthday. Illinois is now seeing the most out-of-state patients seeking abortion care in the country. It comes 3 years after the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision that overturned Roe versus Wade. Planned Parenthood of Illinois says its number of abortion patients is up 47% overall, and 25% of abortion patients are traveling from almost every other state. But the group says threats to Medicaid coverage mean the agency would have to make difficult decisions about closing health centers or increasing service costs, since 40% of their patients rely on Medicaid to pay for treatment, including birth control, cancer screenings, and more. Additionally, the Chicago Abortion Fund says it has become the largest and most relied upon independent abortion fund in the country, distributing over $15 million in abortion and wraparound support funding. Chicago Transit Authority officials say they're hoping for the best, but planning for the worst for 2026. After state lawmakers left Springfield without tackling Chicago area Transit's $770 million budget gap for next year, the Regional Transportation Authority is expected to ask CTA, Metra, and PACE to look at multiple scenarios for budget and service next year. Speaking at today's CTA board meeting, Acting President Nora Learson expressed cautious optimism that lawmakers understand the gravity of the situation, but warned of the potential for, quote, severe and sobering choices ahead. Separately, directors approved a partnership with Cook County Health to install Narcan vending machines at 5 stations in communities with high overdose rates. And in case there was any doubt, it is officially official. Pope Leo is a White Sox fan. He represented his hometown team in a public appearance at the Vatican today, rocking a Sox hat, y'all. Pope Leo was elected the first American pope last month and grew up in the south suburb of Dalton. Maybe he can put in a word with the big guy, turn things around for the Sox, who are currently sitting last in the division. You can hope. Up next, how a local organization is mobilizing against the Trump administration's actions.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
The Rainbow Push Coalition is calling for advocates to come together and push back against federal efforts they say are targeting civil rights and freedoms. Ahead of their annual conference this weekend, the group is planning a Target protest before joining up at the No Kings nationwide rally this weekend. Joining us with more on the future of the organization is Rainbow Push's Executive Director, Yusuf Jackson. Yusuf, thanks for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today.
So it's a big week for Rainbow Push, obviously. You've got the conference, you've got a couple of rallies. What is the message you want to get out?
You know, every year since 1971, the Rainbow Push Coalition has held its annual conference, and this year is no different. This year is different only in a sense that we've never seen times like these. The great temple of legislation that created a more equal society for us and ushered in tremendous reduction in poverty, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Public Accommodations Bill are all under threat. In 1959, I'll just take you back for a moment. In 1959, African Americans were 55% living below the poverty line. The Great Society and the legislation worked. By 1973, we were at 11% of the poverty line, and now we're at 30%. So by rolling back the great efforts of civil rights legislation, we know what the lead up is, and that is poorer health and less opportunity for education, and it costs us our lives. And so we're gathering June 12th here in Chicago with the luncheon starting off tomorrow with Reverend Jamal Bryant, Reverend Al Sharpton leading the charge to give us policy. It occurred to us that the Republicans, that the evangelicals that elected Donald Trump did not wait on the Republican Party to give them policy. They gave the policy to the Republican Party and said, here's what we want, and they found the guy to effect their legislation. Now, we are sitting back, in my opinion, waiting for Democrats to give us policy, but it's the people who have the power, and we must give them policy. So tomorrow, our luncheon is about policies that we want to protect our society and our systems so that our grandchildren have better lives than what we have.
And Yusuf, I know you all have a number of like big names that we all know as far as faith leaders in the community and other civic organizers. I know you've got Reverend Al Sharpton, but locally you've got Marshall Hatch and Otis Moss III. But in addition to the luncheon, something else that you all are planning is the rally tomorrow at a Chicago Target location. Why Target?
Right after we finish our luncheon at Higher 360 tomorrow, we plan to head down in buses and in numbers on the subway and on the bus, on the CTA bus, to get to Target at 1 South State Street, Chicago, on State Street and Madison Avenue. Why? Because Target made commitments to us that they broke. Target has left us at one level broken-hearted by them capitulating so quickly to the demands of the administration. They could have finessed this issue better. We love Target so much we nicknamed them Target. They made commitments to us after the George Floyd killing that they have just broken. So it seems that Target has decided they want our foot traffic, but they don't want our seats at the board. They don't want our seats at the table. And so we want a balanced relationship with Target. And so we intend to protest there tomorrow peacefully. We won't block anybody from shopping if they want to go into Target, but they will pass our picket line. We will be upright because the moral high ground of picketing is nonviolence. So we will protest nonviolence and choose to use our dollars at other places until we can get Target's attention. They must understand that we are a large part of their marketplace, and we want a co-equal relationship with them, not just as consumers, but as business to business, business consumer, as well as business to supplier.
Now, part of your conference this week, as we mentioned, also participation in the No Kings rallies that are happening across the country and, of course, in downtown Chicago this Saturday. How should people who are opposed to what is happening under this administration make their voices heard, on Monday when the rallies, the marches, the protests are over? What next?
First thing is you must participate in this democracy. We live in a participatory democracy. You can't hold back on the strength of your fear and disappointment and frustration. Donald Trump is in office today because we were frustrated, we were afraid, and we were fed up with what we call inactivity of the Democrats. Now look what we have. We could have beaten him at the polls had we voted in the numbers that represented our population. We didn't, and so now we're dealing with this. On Monday morning, you must continue to fight. You can't get tired. This is going to be a long, long race. He's not been in office, don't forget. He's been in office less than 200 days. He's got about 1,300 days left to go. So pace yourself, steel yourself, continue to learn and think about how we got here, why we're in this position. And you're going to have to vote in the midterms because the midterm elections are not that far away, and we can turn this ship around within the next few months.
How are you also, Yusuf, how are you, Rainbow Push, engaging with people in the community, Chicago residents, to take action locally as well?
The Rainbow Push Coalition's mission has not changed. Reverend Jesse Jackson comes to work every day. He is still the president of our organization. I serve faithfully as his chief operating officer, and I'm honored to be under his tutelage as we continue to move this organization forward. Our mission hasn't changed. Our mission is to gain, protect, and defend civil rights by leveling the economic and educational playing fields. That means we can't be silent when education policy affects how we are educated and how we educate our children. We can't be silent with the wealth gap being African Americans representing 1/6 of the rest of the wealth of white households, and Hispanic families representing 1/4 of the wealth of white households. If we close those gaps, I recommend that that equates to about a 6% increase in GDP. So investing in us. Donald Trump was a month ago was in the Middle East touting $1 trillion investment in certain countries. I would love if a fraction of that money would come to the south side of Chicago, would come to South Memphis, would come to Cleveland, would come to Florida. We have opportunities here to invest in, and we can show that we're ready to compete against the world if you invest in us.
How do you plan on also working with, newer, younger generations of activists, many of whom are pushing for progressive forms of change? Obviously at the time in '71, Rainbow Push was one of the only ones doing the work that you all do. Now there are a lot of voices in the choir.
Yeah, that is actually the supreme challenge. A lot of the things we did were groundbreaking. We must return to that groundbreaking energy again. We've got to be first to market. But there are a lot of new opportunities out here for partnership. There are a lot of interesting and young people doing some fantastic work. Our objective is to partner with them, learn from them. We can learn together. Some of the traditional tactics we have with some of the new tools they use. I think the partnership is ripe.
What would you say is what's your vision for the organization that your father created all those years ago in 1971?
My father had a vision and he wanted to be of service. I think on a micro level, everyone at Rainbow Push Coalition wants to be of service to the community. We want to leave the world a better place than what we found. God has been so great to us that we can not only put on our jackets, but we have enough grace left over to help other people put on their jackets. So our objective mainly is to be of service. Now, to do that, we have to change legislation so that we're able to affect. If you go to work every day and tax policy is such that you can't keep the dollars in your pocket, well, then you've got a problem. Your hard work is not paying off. If you try to develop a system of wealth in this country, but 70% of your children are born in single-parent households, you don't have the structure to develop wealth. So we have a lot of work to do from a family perspective as well as from a legislative perspective, and the Rainbow Coalition is ready to take on both.
Lastly, I'll bet a lot of people probably want to know, you've mentioned your dad still coming to work. How is he in about 15 seconds?
Thank you for asking. The Reverend has a significant case of Parkinson's that has made it very difficult for him to walk and to move his body, but his mind works just fine. So every day he communicates and he's doing well. We thank you for your prayers and for working with him side by side for all these years, because he never did this alone. He always did it in partnership.
All right, send him our best. Yusuf Jackson of Rainbow Push Coalition, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and God bless you.
And we're back with more right after this. We'll get back to our program in just 2 minutes with a conversation about the challenges facing many Black fathers and efforts to support them. But first, we're asking for your help. You may have heard about the executive order to pull back appropriated funds to PBS and to cut all funding in the future. We're here to ask you to consider 2 things: making a contribution to WTTW and letting your voice supporting public media be heard. PBS and WTTW have always had a partnership with you, our local audience, and that support is more critical now than it's ever been. As a WTTW and Chicago Tonight viewer, you understand the value of trusted local public media programming, including the journalism you get from Chicago Tonight, as well as PBS NewsHour. Many of you have asked what you can do to help ensure that WTTW remains strong. If this is something that's important to you, you can make your voice heard by contacting your member of Congress. You can learn the facts at WTTW.com/protectmypublicmedia. and share those facts with your family and friends. And if it's right for you, you can donate to WTTW by calling 773-588-1111 or going to WTTW.com or scanning the QR code right there on your screen. Your contribution at whatever level you choose is always appreciated. But what's most important is that you participate. This is public media, and it's our members that keep us strong today and into the future. Here's what some of you, our viewers, have written in to tell us. This is the station, WTTW, where you get the very best complete news stories always. Their other programming is also excellent, especially the dramas and mysteries. Please continue to support public media as I do. PBS is important to me and my family because it shares factual news and stories. We watch it every night and depend on it for our news, not only about our country, but about what is happening in the world. It is critical. Thank you for being a reliable source of news and entertainment. We are grateful members and happy to support your mission. We hope that you find value in what we do here at WTTW News, Chicago Tonight, and throughout the day and night on WTTW. Please consider supporting us in whatever way feels right for you, because we're in this together. So thank you. Chicago Tonight returns in a moment. Fatherhood in the Black community can be a complicated topic. Black men face higher rates of incarceration and unemployment than most other demographic groups, and therefore, reports show they're more likely to be locked out of economic opportunities. That exclusion can place strains on families. But as we approach this Father's Day, research shows new ways to support Black fathers and therefore entire communities. Joining us to discuss more are Richard Wallace, founder and director of Equity and Transformation, a nonprofit that advocates for equity for Black workers, and Arthur Anderson, who's on the board of trustees at Brightpoint, a child and family service organization. Thank you to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Richard, I want to start with you, please, because you co-authored a study called Breaking the Chains, Reclaiming Wealth, Power, and Dignity for Black Men, showcasing stories of Black men, including some who were formerly incarcerated from Chicago's South and West sides. So I want to talk about some of your findings first. Slavery, Jim Crow-era segregation, mass incarceration, and structural policies have consistently blocked Black men from wealth building. Illinois had a Black male labor force participation rate of just 53.1% in 2021. That is compared to 63.5% nationally. And among Black men 20 to 24 years old in Chicago, joblessness reached 55.2% in 2021.
Yes.
What are some of the reasons that you all found that Black men are more likely to be unemployed, locked out of these wealth building opportunities?
Yeah, so again, that report came out in 2021. And I found that, I think through our research, we've been able to discover things that I feel like our community's already known, is that there are a ton of barriers. One is that there's 1,300 collateral consequences related to incarceration. So our folks are literally boxed out of labor from the moment they step home. And so they're forced into this kind of cyclical, informal economy where they have higher rates of engagement with law enforcement, and then they return into jails and prisons, and then they come back out again, right? And so we're dealing with a crisis of opportunity in the city of Chicago, and this report, I'm grateful that we are able to shine a light on it and provide some data that ultimately will move our elected officials to create some solutions.
Yeah, you mentioned those collateral consequences after incarceration and with criminal records. We've done a great deal of reporting on that here at Chicago Tonight, Permanent Punishment. Arthur, you are a single father. You know the stigma of not being allowed or welcomed necessarily into parenting spaces sometimes.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing a little bit of your experience about single parenthood?
Well, I belong to a peer group from Brightpoint called Thriving Fathers, and we teach each other how to be better fathers. We come in with an open mind. It's all inclusive, so we don't feel shame to let our emotions out. And we want to be included in the same things the mothers want to be included in. We want to be at the schools. We want to be going to shelters. When I had my first son, they didn't have a shelter for us. I felt like I had to pick between giving my son to DCFF and me going into a shelter. And
because the shelters tend to only make room for mothers with children, but not single fathers with children.
Single fathers.
Or single men only, no children.
So it was hard, but we managed to get through in Brightpoint, which Thriving Fathers helped.
What are some of the common threads that you hear from your fellow members of that peer group? What are some of the concerns they have and the places they need help?
Well, we need help with housing. We need help with just getting to know our kids and being able to know them without being just a financial pawn. We want to be able to take our kids out and show them these are their good old days. So we want to make their days count too. We want to be in the schools, in the classrooms. If your kid have an IP, we want to be able to be there to share with them and encourage them what they should take and how they should be given. So we want to be included, all inclusive. And in the meetings, we can talk about anything without fear of being ridiculed or being felt less of.
And to be clear, you've got 3 kids at home and several who've flown the coop. Is that right?
I have 2 at home.
2 at home.
And now 1 in college and 1 in grade school.
Okay, got you. Richard, your report, you offer some policy solutions as well about redistributing wealth to Black men and closing the racial wealth gap. Some of your recommendations include reparations, baby bonds for Black children, shared equity housing models, and guaranteed income for system-impacted Black men. Your organization, you actually began the first guaranteed income program for formerly incarcerated individuals. I think we've talked about that here on this very program. How's that been working? How did that work?
It worked phenomenally. I mean, I think it broke so many myths as it relates to our folks. Our folks were applying for jobs on a regular basis. Our folks, I mean, we're able to give for folks that don't know, the name of the pilot is called the Chicago Future Fund. It's a guaranteed income pilot. We believe in the framework of targeted universalism. So essentially, universal goals for everybody, but you need targeted interventions for different segments, right? Like what's necessary in Austin may look different than what's necessary in Inglewood, and so on and so forth. Or what's necessary in Lincoln Park may be different than what's necessary in West Garfield Park.
Right.
And so we chose to use a targeted intervention and provide direct cash payments to formerly incarcerated and system-impacted people. What we saw was increases in psychological wellness, so people felt better just by the idea of getting a direct cash payment and people acknowledging their circumstances. In addition, 90% of our participants worked either part-time or full-time during the program. So the idea that if you give people direct cash payments, it will decrease their engagement with the labor force was untrue. Actually, people had the resources to go out and seek employment. Right. It's really hard to get a job if you don't have a phone to call people back on. If you don't have an income, chances are you may not have a phone, right? So things like that. And people also paid down debt. Homelessness decreased by from 35% to 24%, and only 3 people out of the 100 participants had any engagement with law enforcement. The national average or the state average is about 40% as it relates to recidivism, and our folks, only 3 people had any engagement, let alone incarceration with law enforcement.
So you've got the data that makes a compelling case, right? But in a time like this, it might be a tough political sell to convince people that people who are formerly incarcerated should get, guaranteed basic income,
Yeah.
that is maybe covered by the taxpayers, right? Like in this instance, that is not the case. But how do you make that sell?
How do you make the sell? I mean, so I had the awesome opportunity to participate in the passage of a bill called HB 1438. It was the Recreational Cannabis Tax Act. It was the first cannabis legalization policy to incorporate reparations for the war on drugs. I was there at the bill signing. Through that policy, we were able to win 25% of the cannabis tax revenue for perpetuity. That means forever. That money is distributed through a program called R3. R3 provides direct cash payments to nonprofit organizations serving, not direct cash payments, they provide grants, right, to organizations that are serving R3 communities. R3 communities were communities that were devastated by the war on drugs, right? Yes. And so what we're saying very clearly is that nonprofits are important, but we can go a step further and provide direct cash payments to those communities. That money looks like about $55 million or more annually. And so that money can be distributed in the form of direct cash payments to the residents in those disproportionately impacted areas. What we're saying clearly is that formerly incarcerated people should be eligible too. Right?
We're almost out of time, Arthur. We've got about 30 seconds left. In the peer groups that we're talking about, how do you make the case to Black men that they can be vulnerable and honest about their feelings in their conversations?
Just like I'm doing. My son graduated class valedictorian from his class Monday. And if we dare, it make a difference. So we teach each other how to be better fathers.
All right. Plans for Father's Day?
I'm waiting for a surprise.
Nobody knows yet. Okay, maybe
I'm
I'll
ask Samantha.
I'm sure the kids are at home cooking up something brilliant right
Indeed.
now, gentlemen. All right, that is where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Richard Wallace and Arthur Anderson. Thanks to you both. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Finally tonight, legendary musician, singer, songwriter, and innovator Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys has died. He was 82 years old. We leave you this evening with Wilson singing the classic Fun, Fun, Fun as part of the 2015 WTTW Soundstage special, Brian Wilson and Friends. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching.